Okay, thank you everyone for joining today. I want to start by introducing myself. My name is Cassie and I'm a business advisor here at CallSource. Thanks for joining us in part 4 of our webinar series, Preparing for a Peak Season. And I am also joined by a senior business advisor, Nicole Mirabelli.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today.
So if you haven't done so already, feel free to select a telephone option under the audio section of your dashboard to call into today's meeting. At the end, we will have a Q&A session. If you have any questions, you can type a question into the question box, or I could unmute you if you raise your hand, and you could ask your question that way as well. We want this to be an interactive webinar, so feel free to ask any of those questions at the end. As a reminder, this webinar will also be recorded, so we will have that recording available to you when we are finished today. All right, so let's get started. As I said, today we're going to be focusing on preparing for a peak season. So busy periods can present some unique challenges for you as an owner or manager and for your team. It's easy to look down at the calendar or even just be in an office where phones are just ringing nonstop and feel overwhelmed. But instead of just trying to keep your head above water, there are ways to prepare and maximize your efforts. And we here at CallSource are going to help you with that. It should go without saying that taking the time to properly prepare for busy periods can and will help alleviate problems and improve performance. But we do understand that as owners and leaders in your business, you are already wearing multiple hats. So when it comes to managing day-to-day operations, you have the urgent and the important. In this webinar, we are going to discuss ways that CallSource can help you prepare for and manage the demands of a peak season by, 1, identifying your business's constraint points during peak season, 2, utilizing CallSource reporting to analyze phone traffic and outcomes, and 3, implementing actionable analytics to save time and improve performance. So how can you prepare? Well, first you want to do your homework. It's difficult to prepare for a peak season unless you have an idea of expected volumes. Keep in mind that for some of you, your business's peak season may not be quite as obvious as it would for, say, a retail industry during the holidays. So for example, an HVAC company can have an increase in calls during the summer when it's much warmer out. Or a plumber in an area of the country with some harsh, nasty winters may be busier if people's pipes are bursting or things of that nature. So it really depends on the nature of your business, as well as slightly, depending on where you're located and how weather may affect your business. So I'm going to launch a poll here. I have a question to give to you. What is the busiest time of year for your business? And I will give you all a moment to answer that. Okay, so it looks like everyone has voted. Let's see the results here. It's a split. So some of you, it looks like spring, some in the summer, some in the fall. So it's good that I didn't see any I don't know here's, although some of you maybe looking at this later aren't quite sure. But it's definitely important to know, at least have an idea of when your busy season is. So it's, as I said, it's important to understand the cycles of your industry so that you can navigate those seasonal fluctuations. So historical and forecast volume data really provides insight that's valuable to you for when those peak seasons are expected. You could start the preparation process by reviewing CallSource analytics to see when you saw a spike in volume and then assess how you've previously performed. Our reporting can provide transparency on marketing and on your appointment conversion. For example, if you have peak calls in May, but your conversion dropped, this may be an indication that you are at scheduling capacity Or maybe your team was not able to properly handle the increase in call volume. That's something else to keep in mind. Additional research will probably be needed to identify what prevented you from converting these appointments. But this data will allow you to establish expectations for success for the upcoming peak season. And in addition, with CallSource's wealth of industry data, you can also benchmark your business against your peers. So comparing KPIs to industry targets can be an incentive to drive productivity and preparation needed to exceed those averages. If analytics are not available, talk to your employees about how your team could operate more effectively. It's important that you're asking the team, how can we be more efficient? Contributing to the solution creates team buy-in, and you may also just uncover some great ideas in that conversation as well. So you will also need to plan ahead, and I can't stress this enough. The sooner you start to prepare for the influx of volume, the better equipped you're going to be to handle it. Peak season should be viewed as a mini organizational change and treated as such. Operations are potentially different, and everyone's attention should be focused on meeting those peak demand and achieving success. A business that can understand how their operation and employees are performing against goals that they have set via real-time data can be extremely valuable at any time, but especially during these peak periods when efficiency becomes so critical. And for certain businesses, this could be a crucial kind of make or break portion of the year. Other businesses have peak seasons based on various events or timing. For example, a specific campaign may promote a spring AC tune-up before the hot summer comes along. So no matter the reason, if a business is to succeed, the peak season must be managed as efficiently as possible. And as the busy season starts, having the ability to monitor operations will ensure that projected goals are met or that the necessary adjustments are made in order to reach those goals. Reporting and analytics tools are really essential during these peak periods. Proceeding through peak times without the proper visibility into call volumes, staffing needs, or appointment capacity doesn't allow the organization to flex and proactively address these concerns. So of course, CallSource reporting will help you document your efforts and streamline your performance measurement. With the peak season approaching, look out for automation opportunities that can reduce the manual effort on your end. Many CallSource reports can be set up to be delivered via email, or we also offer programs that can alert you when a prospect did not successfully convert into an appointment just within hours of that initial call. This allows you to stay ahead of your competitors and make outbound call attempts. For more information or to get set up on these automation, please reach out to your dedicated CallSource representative. So by reviewing metrics, you can identify improvement opportunities and set goals for success. It'll also be important, though, to listen to your calls to determine if your potential customers are receiving the ideal experience. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole to talk about tips for what to specifically listen for during this peak season time. Go ahead, Nicole.
Thank you, Cassie. So in our How to Assess Your Team's Calls webinar, we discussed how to use call recordings as a tool for performance improvement. During a peak period, there are some additional important things for you to listen to specifically. So let's start with, do your call handlers sound rushed or distracted? So start by listening to the greeting itself. Is the business name and call handler's name clearly stated when answering the phone? If the greeting is poorly handled, you may have already lost a potential customer as your greeting sets the tone for the call. And are your call handlers presenting value? When the volume picks up, it's easy to turn into order takers and rush through the phone calls, especially if your phones are ringing off the hook during a peak time. Make sure your team is conveying the integrity and worth of the business in order to differentiate you from your competitors. When the heat rises, your callers are going to be looking out for anybody that can help them as soon as possible. Make sure your team is still providing that value of your business to those phone callers. And don't just lose callers because they are price shopping around. Make sure you're differentiating yourself and providing that value. It will also be important to determine why calls are not being converted during phone calls if you're having missed opportunities. Call listening will help you identify training opportunities. For example, do your call handlers have to take messages and call the customer back because they can't handle too many phone calls at once? Or are you at scheduling capacity so you're not able to book that caller during that initial conversation? It may also be that the customer is just not willing to wait for the next available appointment. By identifying appointments and why they are not being set, you can properly coach your team on how to handle the situation. Back to you, Cassie.
Thanks, Nicole. Yeah, so that's some great tips. And if you want more details, as Nicole mentioned, we do have a whole webinar on how to assess your team's calls as well. So you might want to review that before your peak season comes around again. So those of you that are just starting with CallSource, pay attention to the metrics gathered now in order to plan ahead for next year. An organized data collection is essential to understanding results and learning from them. And when a peak season has come and gone, it's important to conduct a thorough review. Repeat what worked and minimize what didn't work. So next I want to talk about why you should examine staffing during a peak period. So if you're not prepared, you may find that you're short on staff members or team members struggle with increased volume or workloads during these busy periods. When it comes to staffing up, don't just add bodies. You want to create a plan. A wave of inexperienced staff arriving as volume goes up typically is going to lead to mistakes, excessive demands on managers, and potentially lost customers. So you want your staff to be effective, not just present when the pressure increases. The best results come from closely evaluating the process to determine how it can be modified to streamline the work. CallSource reporting will provide an analysis of your business's peak days and times for prospects to help you identify patterns in your call volume. When analyzing your data, think about the following. What day of the week is receiving the most prospect calls? And what time? And what day and time are you experiencing the most missed opportunities where that appointment is not being set? And lastly, do you have the appropriate staff on the schedule for these times? Make sure to look out for CallSource reporting to help you out to identify these key metrics. So time stressors are some of the most universal sources of pressure in the workplace. So I want to talk to you about some calendar blocking. These time stressors happen as a result of having too much to do in too little time. Your workload is already high and you have many other urgent tasks already on your to-do list. So because of this, you may be anxious, can't concentrate, and everything is a bit distracting. So you're probably looking at your calendar and feeling like you couldn't possibly add on one more thing. But I'm going to tell you that you should. Setting aside specific time in your schedule to work on certain tasks will help you manage your workload, especially during a peak season. Knowing exactly what to do and when will help you feel much more in control of your tasks. And time management means being effective as well as efficient. By blocking time on your calendar, you can clear enough time to do what's essential for your success. And this will maximize your chances of keeping on track and help you avoid the stress of work becoming more urgent than it's really necessary. In this way, you move from that type of firefighting mode into a position where you can maximize and grow your business. And be sure to block out at least once per week to log into CallSource at the minimum. If you invest just 30 minutes per week reviewing metrics, you are empowered to influence your conversion rate during the course of each month by ensuring that required changes are in fact implemented. And it will be important to also invest in frequent team meetings, even during the busiest of times. It's very easy to fall back into those bad habits when everyone feels pressured for time. But you don't want the goals that you've set for your business and team to be disregarded because leadership is just too busy to monitor and follow up on the progress. Another tip is to try to have time slots when you are available on your calendar so that people know they could speak to you at these times. A good way to do this is to arrange regular meetings with those who interrupt you often so that you could deal with all of their issues at once. And you'll then be able to concentrate on your important activities for longer and stay in the zone for those specific tasks. So when reflecting on what we discussed today, think about what CallSource and your performance measurement can teach you to streamline your operations and efficiencies. What were the lessons learned? Were there any major problems that need to be resolved for the future? If so, identify those and develop a plan to take action and set dates for a resolution. It is important to ask these questions and do a careful evaluation of what worked and what didn't at the end of a peak season so that all areas of the business know how their department performed and what can be improved. So at this time, I want to open up for Q&A. If anyone has questions, feel free to raise your hand and I can unmute you, or you could type a question into the question box.
Hey, Cassie, it's Nicole again.
Yes.
I had a quick question for you. A lot of times my clients will ask me what report is useful to see trending data so they can determine when their specific peak time is.
Yeah, that's definitely a good question. I know I've gotten that question from some of my clients as well. So what report is the most useful for this? If you've been in practice for a while, you probably know there's at least vaguely aware there's a rhythm to the year, right? So tuning into these rhythms can help you manage your time, talents, and resources and add to your bottom line. And our reporting can obviously help you make informed decisions based on your volume. So a great report to use would be the monthly owner summary report. And this report will provide month-over-month trending data for both your prospects and appointments. So if you want to dive in this report in more detail, just feel free to reach out to your CallSource representative. And it looks like I had a question come into the question box as well from Alana. And Alana asks, what metrics should I look at if I am logging in once a week? So there are a couple different reports that could help you make the most of your time when logging into the platform. My first recommendation would be the traffic analysis report. So this is going to give you an at-a-glance view of how your call flow and busy times are looking. And it's also going to let you know if calls are being missed. So when analyzing your missed calls, try to think about some of the following. One would be, why are they not making it into your office? Do you have, maybe you don't have enough lines for calls to make it in? Are your call handlers spending too much time on the phone? You could see their average call duration there. And maybe do you need to increase staffing? And you want to also focus on calls that did not successfully convert into appointments. So this may be on your reporting. If you're getting some of our alerts of those calls, you could focus on them right then and there within hours of the call. And these calls are going to give you insight as to what objections your team's receiving, so you can coach them on how to respond and how to maybe anticipate these objections that could be coming up. So traffic analysis as well as your missed opportunities would be what you'd want to focus on in the system on a weekly basis. And it looks like I don't have any more questions, so I want to thank you all again. That concludes our time for today. Be on the lookout for our next webinar that's going to be coming up. That is setting yourself up for success, how to use CallSource to better your business. Thank you all again, and hope to see you come back soon.